So, how are you doing, Kenneth? Thank you for being here.
I'm fabulous. Thank you for inviting me.
This is really great. So, I'm going to give you a little bit of time for anyone listening right now. I don't think that you and I have ever officially met. We follow each other on social media. So I kind of have a good idea of like where you stand, what your beliefs are, and core values and things of that nature. But I first saw you a couple years back when Justicia Fronteriza launched like I guess like their big event to say, hey, we're here. This is like the organization that we're like what we're about, what we're going to be doing. And you gave a speech there. And I was like, okay, they're passionate about what they're talking about. That's cool. And then that was kind of like my first glimpse into who Kenneth is. But I'm going to give you a chance now to kind of tell me a little bit about yourself.
So, again, my name is Kenneth Bell. So I'm not originally from El Paso. I was born in D.C. I grew up in Silver Spring and Beltsville, Maryland. That's where I went to high school. So when people ask what high school I went to, they don't know the answer, or they've never heard of my high school. It's High Point in Beltsville, Maryland. I've always kind of been passionate about causes and helping people in any capacity, and that's one of the reasons why I decided to join the Army, was because I wanted to serve others and serve a purpose greater than myself. So I joined the Army in 2012, stationed at Fort Bliss. That's how I...
Oh, this is where you started your military career, in
Yes,
Fort Bliss?
Fort Bliss, that's where I started.
Okay.
I was active duty, and then I loved El Paso so much, the community, the people, that I transitioned from active duty to reserves, and I stayed here. I'm still in the reserves now. I'll hit my 12-year mark next month in August.
That's a long time.
Yes, it is. As far as like the DMV area, that's where I spent most of my life. That's where most of my family is now. Like my parents are from there, grandparents. I have a few relatives who live in South Jersey, but even those folks are from DC. They just moved to Jersey after they retired.
Just kind of scattered around a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, you said that you always wanted to, you knew, like, you liked causes, you liked, obviously, organizing, being a part of things like that. Did you ever see yourself, though, in a capacity to, like, run for office? Or you just thought, this is as far as I go, just activism, bringing awareness, and support in some capacity?
Yeah, I've never imagined that I would be running for office. This is, like, kind of new to me, and I've even in 2017 is when I started getting involved in political campaigns, working in that capacity, but I never saw myself actually being a candidate.
Just so listeners know, can you tell us what exactly it is that you're running for, like the position that you're campaigning for right now?
I am running for city council in District 3, so that's East Central area. District 3 goes from Trowbridge to George Theater and south of I-10.
So let's backtrack a little bit to where I first got, like I said, I kind of saw you and I heard you speak at this Justicia Fronteriza launch. You were first a member of Justicia Fronteriza.
I'm a co-founder.
Oh, you're a co-founder. See, I didn't know that. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, and then, so as far as I understand, Justicia Fronteriza is like the first of its kind here in the city, correct? It's like a very progressive, like for the people, because the motto is indeed Pueblo over profit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of like, that was the whole idea behind this organization, correct?
Correct. So just to give you a little bit more background,
So
Justicia Fronteriza was formed in 2021, and they were formed by, in addition to myself, Veronica Carvajal, who had ran for mayor the previous year, a lot of the folks who worked on her campaign, and folks who worked on Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign in 2020. Unfortunately, Ms. Carvajal did not win the mayoral election.
she was close. She was close, but yeah.
Yeah, I tell people that if the ABC or the KVIA candidate forum had aired before early voting had started, she would have at least made the runoff. Because we had a lot of people who who had already voted and then saw the candidate for him, and they were like, man, I really like her, but I already voted. She would have made the runoff against Oscar Leeser and if that had happened. So we had a lot of momentum, and we wanted to keep it going, and that's when we formed Justicia Fronteriza. So it's a political action committee that's designed to help other grassroots progressive candidates run for local offices, so local meaning school board, city council, commissioner's court, and we also fight for progressive causes and democracy reforms.
Yeah, and then as far as I also understand, it's like the organization itself is always encouraging and would almost prefer that somebody from the community would kind of rise above and decide to run for office, right? That's kind of like the encouragement as well?
That 100%. We want people who are involved in their communities, people who have spoken up in the past, who have kind of risen above apathy, risen above just, not caring, and who stepped up to the plate. Those are the real leaders of our city. Those are the people who are going to save the world.
And I like that you said not caring, because obviously you have to care in order to pursue these positions and do this. But I'm assuming you mean don't care as in I no longer care to what the quote unquote norm is and the expectations for the politics that we've been running up until now, correct? Like I need to break out of that. I need to break through and do better for the people.
Yes, 100%. And just also, Texas is a non-voting state, but even by those standards, like the bar is on the ground in El Paso, it still hits its head on the bar. Our voting turnout is abysmal. Like it is horrible, especially this last primary. And a lot of times it's either people don't know or they know and they don't care. And as someone who has worked on political campaigns for a while, one of the things that just breaks my heart is when I talk to someone, usually either a young person or an elderly person, who just says, nothing matters. Maybe
the young people are like almost like not that they're not interested, but they're just like maybe they haven't been tainted by the system as much, and they're just like, oh, I don't know how I feel. But then older people tend to always think, because I know people like my age and older, whenever, especially when we're talking like an presidential election year, right, like this year, and just here locally with having like the campaigns that we have going on, a lot of people in my age bracket or older really truly genuinely believe that their vote does not matter, and that nothing they do is going to really weigh or add positive weight when it comes to elections. How do you handle something like that when somebody, like right now, you're running for District 3, you said, correct?
Yes.
And you're obviously out there campaigning, talking to people. And when you bump into this situation and somebody tells you that, like, how do you handle that? What is your response? What is your genuine response to that? Like your belief?
So when that happens, my job is really to listen to the person, to find out why they feel the way they feel and how they came to that conclusion that their vote doesn't matter, or that somehow local politics doesn't affect them. And then from there, I'm going to have to segue to kind of what their values are, what their concerns are, and then try to convince them that yes, their vote does count, that it does matter.
Yeah.
If their vote didn't matter, then you wouldn't have these people in the state and national levels trying so hard to suppress it, trying so hard to make them think that their vote doesn't count. They wouldn't need all these stupid voter suppression laws if voting didn't matter.
Yeah, and that's almost like, of course, like when you put it that way and you present it to people, of course it's like, well, yeah, they're trying so hard for me not to care, and they're pouring so much money into candidates that are going to be for them, right? Manipulated by them to ensure that people like us feel like, oh, what's the point? They have so much power, they have all the money, like my vote isn't going to really matter. So it's true, when you frame it that way, it does. It makes sense. It says what it is.
Right. And when we look at like just how, voter turnout is, if a few thousand of those people who think that their vote didn't matter actually just got together and voted, they would essentially turn the tide in every election that we have, at least locally. We have school board elections that were decided by 67 votes. We've had city council elections that were decided by 200 to 300 votes. elections matter. Elections have consequences, and so many people think that it doesn't matter, that it doesn't count, that they're just by themselves. And a lot of this has to do with this idea that we're all just individuals and it's every person's for themselves, but we are in a society, right? And it's not every person for themselves, otherwise we wouldn't have a society. Society would collapse. We're in it together.
Yeah. Now, let me sort of take you back a little bit. Like you said, okay, I've been involved in campaigning. I've been that supportive role, that activism, component of different things. When do you decide, maybe I should do this, maybe I should pursue this, and why?
So, in District 3, there are a lot of good people in District 3. Before I made the decision to run, there were 2 other people who had kind of sort of expressed interest. I won't say their names. So I reached out to both of them, and I told them that either one of them had decided to run, that I would not, that I would just support them. And then both of them had eventually come to the conclusion that that running for office wasn't the right move for them. And so that's when I decided, okay, now it's my turn to step up to the plate.
So you were like, okay, well, now it's time to really put my foot where my mouth is, I guess. Right? Like, if I'm saying this, I got to do it now.
Right.
Wow. Yeah. So then, okay, so you decide to run. I'm assuming, of course, you have the support of Justicia Fronteriza, who is, like you said, you're a co-founder of them.
Yes.
So do you decide in that moment, you decide, and then what do you do next? Who do you tell? What's the next move? What happens then?
That's when I start talking to, my inner circle, the people that I trust, the people that I've worked with, people that I have a lot of respect for, like Justicia Fronteriza and other organizations. So far, the community has been so supportive of me running, because
that's good.
They know that I'm gonna do the work. They know that I can be held accountable, and that I will be held accountable by the community, not by special interests. And they know that I have the receipts. I've been doing activism and community organizing for several years.
Now, to get right into what are your plans? You're running on the basis of what? Like, what is it that you want to do? Let's say the election happens today. Mm-hmm. You win.
Sweet.
What, right? So we're going to manifest it. Okay. We're putting it out there.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna
manifest it.
Well, there's going to be a runoff most likely, so I need to make the runoff first and then from there win the election.
But let's just say, for the sake of this right now, you win. You're there. You go into the job the following Monday or whenever. What is it what are your plans for the community?
I have a lot of plans, but let me just give you the top 3 for right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, 1 is going to be public safety. Right? District 3 is getting a new command center in the Cielo Vista area, where Bonham Elementary School used to be. So one of the things that we do need, and this has been a huge concern, is that we need to have reduced 911 call times, 911 call times. We also need to have more police officers patrolling, particularly at nighttime, because catalytic converter thefts are a serious issue, not only in District 3, but throughout the city. And we know how they do it. They go in 2-man teams. The first guy to look out will actually take out your camera. So if you have a DoorDash camera or camera on your porch, they'll destroy that so that you can't actually see them committing the crime. Then the second person goes under your car, rips out the catalytic converter. They're in and out in 10 minutes. I've actually spoken to a guy who had his catalytic converter stolen last October in broad daylight. He was on the west side. He parked his car. He was doing some canvassing. 20 minutes later, he comes back to his car. Catalytic converter stolen. Cost him $2,000.
That's great. I didn't even know that was happening.
Oh yeah. Some folks on Next Door Neighborhood app have posted videos of people coming to their house at 2 or 3 in the morning and going under their cars.
That's awful. Because now you go into first of all, the fact that they're trespassing, and just you obviously come out of that feeling great, I can't even be safe in my house and on my property. But then the money, a lot of El Pasoans are struggling right now, and to have to go drop $2,000 to fix your vehicle, that's not cheap, and it's not doable for a lot of people.
No, it's not. And the thing is, we know why they're doing it. They want the copper, which is valuable, so they'll take it to junkyards either in the city or cross over to Juarez, and they'll sell the copper for money.
Do you feel that increasing security, like, would that be the thing that would stop it?
Ultimately, we want to deter crime, prevent it from happening. It's easy to be tough on crime and catching someone and throwing them in jail after the crime's done, but that doesn't undo the damage that they've done. So yes, having that extra presence would serve as a deterrent to prevent them from committing the crime in the first place. Even if you catch them, you're still paying $2,000 to get the
Well, yeah, because you still have to fix your car.
Right.
You still have to fix it.
So ultimately, it's to prevent the crime from happening in the first place. Because they're not going to do it if they know there's cops around the corner.
Yeah, there's more pressure.
Right. And then just continuing with preventing crime, I also want to expand our crisis intervention teams to make sure that when someone is having a mental health crisis, we have a member of crisis intervention team out there with the police, people who are trained to handle those situations. Because the cops are not trained to handle, mental health crises, and we shouldn't expect them to do that. And so we don't want folks who are suffering from mental health episodes to be mistaken for criminals. And then the crisis intervention team not only protects that person who could be a danger to themselves or others, they also protect the department, they protect the city from potential lawsuits. Because if something happens, someone pulls out their phone, records it, then it's on FitFam or it's on some other social media channel, then the narrative's out of hand and the city ends up settling.
Yeah, but then the problem's never solved.
Right.
It's just like we just make that payment and now we keep going. There's no training for cops. There's no additional assistance, like you said, like somebody who can handle that type of thing. And so it's it's a vicious cycle.
Right. And it's just tax dollars going down the drain. So again, it goes back to taking preventative measures. You solve the issue before it becomes a big problem.
So are those kind of are there other things that that district would greatly benefit from that you are interested in ensuring it happens or at least build on it?
Yes. Another issue that's happened in District 3, but also more so like the core of the city. So District 3, District 2, I think District 7 to an extent. We need to improve animal services. There are a lot of stray cats and stray dogs in the district. And so Animal Services has a great catch and release program where they'll trap the animals, spay and neuter them, and then they'll clip their ear so that they can be identified as having been spayed and neutered and then release them. We just need to help expand their capabilities so they can do that in a greater capacity. One issue that we do need to handle is illegal dog breeding, because that exacerbates the problem. People they're breeding them, selling the puppies, and then 6 months to a year later, those puppies are getting dumped into the street because the family doesn't want them anymore. And that just creates more problems. That just creates that whole vicious cycle. And the thing is, there are no licensed dog breeders in El Paso as of this recording. There's no licensed dog breeders, so everyone's doing it illegally.
So, okay. I was going to say, so you essentially, if you're going to a dog breeder, as of this recording, you're doing it through someone who's not, has no permission or nothing legal attached to it.
Right. And the issue, I guess one of the challenges of cracking down on it is that we have to prove intent, that they were breeding the dog for profit.
Which is hard to do because, I personally, just on my personal timeline of social media, specifically Facebook, I feel like I see that more on Facebook. Somebody will just be like, oh, I didn't know my dog was pregnant. And, here's this. And how do you prove that if the person's like, I didn't know and I had no intention of, It's kind of weird because sometimes, I know that rescue people who work with the shelter for animals and who rescuing animals and fostering them and stuff, they always say never ever ever accept a pet for free, right? Because it's almost like a red flag. If somebody gives you a pet for free, it's like a red flag that they're not legitimate, which now I'm finding out they're not either way. But they always encourage you to like pay a rehoming fee, because now this person's going to take care of the dog, because now they're financially invested, which I guess makes sense to some degree. But then to go back to what you're saying, it's like, what if I go to somebody and they're like, my dog was pregnant, I didn't know, here, like, I'm just asking for a rehoming fee of $150 to make sure that you are taking care of this pet, and I'm paying this money. It's like, now I'm still encouraging that, right? But I can't prove that that's what they set out to do in the first place, that they weren't trying to make a profit.
Right. That's kind of the thing where we're kind of at the crossroads of how do we solve that. But again, I think it's just more resources for the animal services people who are able to kind of better assess that situation. Like
maybe come up with a plan that works for them and just give them the ability, the resources to do that. Okay.
I'm going to trust the experts on this one. Just going back to the whole issue of like dogs. Do you know Ruby Montana by any chance? She's in charge of Bridge Pup Rescue.
I don't believe I do.
There's an ordinance that she and Veronica Carvajal were trying to work on called Lupe's Law. The story behind that is Ruby was walking her dog Lupe one day, and a pit bull just came out, attacked her dog, mauled it to death right in front of her.
Oh my gosh.
And so the dog has an owner, but the owner was separated from their dog for about 30 days but didn't face any consequences. And now the owner, I think if they haven't already, they're in the process of moving to New Mexico to escape justice. And this has been an issue, in different parts of the city where people's dogs have gotten loose and attacked people. I spoke to one lady who was attacked by a pit bull. She had to get stitches and rabies shots. The dog was put down, but the owner didn't face consequences. And again, if you're going to own a dog, particularly a pit bull, the dog needs to be trained so that it doesn't go attacking people, even if it gets loose. I don't blame the dog, I blame the owner. And so what Lupe's Law would do was it would hold folks accountable for when their dogs attack people. So right now, that's kind of in limbo, but if I am elected, which we're going to manifest that, then I will push for that.
Yes, we already did.
I'm going to push for Lupe's Law to be the law of the land in El Paso.
I actually do agree with that, because having a dog, just a pet in general, but especially like a dog, I know a lot of people love pit bulls and bulldogs because they are beautiful dogs. And you're right, it's not the animal's fault. I know people who are very responsible with their pets, and their pit bulls and bulldogs are actually very, very tame, very, well-mannered, because they're taken care of, right? But I have seen myself several times, people who leave their pit bulls and I guess more aggressive known dog breeds out all the time. These dogs are neglected, and obviously the animal is going to react to that neglect, to that abuse, to the weather. It's horribly hot here in El Paso, and I mean, you have an animal outside all day, of course they're going to be reacting, not in a very good way. So I actually think that's a really good idea, because then you have those same dogs that are already struggling with neglect and abuse, and they're not paid attention to at all and struggling without proper care. Then they get loose. Of course they're going to, be afraid of everybody and act like an animal, attack.
Right. And then, with bully breeds like pit bulls and bulldogs, oftentimes they are wrongfully and negatively stereotyped as just being overly aggressive, and that they just attack people. No, my best friend has a pit bull, and her pit bull is one of the sweetest dogs I have ever met. She's great around children. She doesn't attack anyone, and she's a rescue as well. But it's all
which a lot of people think if you have a rescue bully, you cannot trust them, but I think you're right. It goes back to the owners and the responsibility that they're taking to ensure that animal is safe to be around others. And you know your own animals, and you know what they're capable of. And I think that's a great idea, to hold owners accountable, because it's very common, sadly, here in the community that people get dogs just because they're cute, and then they no longer want to deal with them. And then, of course, our shelters are always super packed, so sometimes it's very hard to find spaces for them. So when you can't just go and drop them off, now you have these other situations happening.
Right. And so I would encourage folks who want a dog to go to the shelters and get rescues. Don't go on Facebook
Yes.
Marketplace or Craigslist and buy and be part of the problem. Let's get the dogs out of the rescue shelters, out of those cages, and give them proper homes.
Yes. Yes, and be a responsible owner.
Right.
Please.
And I think-
Please be a responsible
Right.
pet owner.
And if people stop buying them, even if they're paying the rehoming fees, that would encourage folks to actually get their animals spayed and neutered, because if your dog accidentally gets pregnant, now you have 6 more to take care of. You're going to get spayed and neutered real quick.
I know, trust me, we have 3, and as soon as they were, the 2 we did get from the shelter, and then as soon as the little one was like of age, I was like, we are going to get you fixed, buddy, because we're not going to have any surprises around here. But yeah, so that's a great thing that I think the entire city, not just like the district you're in, but the entire community can benefit from. What are some of the other things that you feel you're really wanting to push for to help your district?
Another thing I really want to help, this would help the city, but especially folks in District 3, is that I do want to amend Title 12 of the city charter, which states that homeowners are responsible for maintaining the sidewalks in front of their houses. How it works is like the sidewalks are owned by the cities, but each homeowner is responsible for maintaining the sidewalk in front of their house. Now, as far as like pulling out the weeds, I think homeowners can do that. It might be a pain, but it's not like that bad. But as far as them getting a bill in the mail saying, hey, the sidewalk is messed up, you need to hire a contractor, I don't particularly think that's fair in most cases, because again, the city owns it, and District 3 has a lot of elderly folks. We're an older district, so a lot of them are on fixed incomes.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking, because I think of my parents. If they were to have, they already are on a fixed income, right? And like they're still struggling sometimes. So it's like now to get a bill on top of that for something that they cannot control.
Right.
That's unfair.
It is unfair. And oftentimes the argument against that would be, well, if they have like a tree in their yard, the root kind of uproots the sidewalk. I guess, yeah, in that case, a person would be legally responsible because that is their tree. But not everyone has an oak tree in their front yard that's going to uproot the sidewalk.
Right. So do you think that would be more like, okay, let's look at this as at a case by case basis? And
yeah, we can look at it on a case by case basis. And the city does have a fund that they use for to make curb cuts, but that's not enough. We do need to look at it on a case by case basis, because this is not only an issue for homeowners, it's also an accessibility issue. Like folks who may have physical limitations, like they may be wheelchairs, or they might be parents of young children who have to push strollers. We don't want them in the streets. We don't want our kids walking in the streets because the sidewalk is too messed up. And so I believe the city does have a responsibility for that, and it's not just on the person who happens to live right in front of the sidewalk, especially if it's city property.
I think it's important to mention, which I think at this point people listening probably already know, but just to have you confirm so they trust, you are not being paid. You're not taking money from any big corporations. You have your own grassroots campaign that you're doing, correct?
That is correct.
Well, anybody that's listening right now that's donating, it's like your hard-earned money that's going to a campaign, which is why you are going to take this serious and you're going to do the work, because it's people that are like believing in you and placing their trust and their money and everything on you and your campaign.
Right. You are investing in this campaign, so you have an investment in this campaign being successful. You are investing in the future of District 3, but also the future of the city, because we need more, community-oriented folks in city council. We need them in commissioners court. We need them at the school boards. We need folks who are people-oriented, not profit-oriented, making decisions.
Yes. What's going to be your policy when it comes to people that, are you going to have an open door policy? Are people free to just come and talk to you? Do you want to have that relationship with your community?
Absolutely. One of the things I would like to do is have an office in the district. That way folks don't have to travel all the way downtown and try to find parking just to be able to talk to me. Right now, to my knowledge, only one city council representative has an office in their district, and that's Henry Rivera from District 7. I could be wrong, but to my knowledge, I think he's the only one. That's something I think is important. Previous city council representatives from District 3 have had offices in the district. I think it just makes you more accessible.
And I think in the end, that's what I almost feel like sometimes that's why people lose hope, because they invest time, energy, money into politicians or just people campaigning in general who it feels almost like they're showering you with all the things that you want to hear, right? And then once they're in the door and you are a part of pushing them through and putting them in that place, they kind of disappear. And then that's it. You like whatever, you know what I mean? Like you can't have access to them. It's hard to like get a meeting with them. It's hard to get them to come out and maybe like for people, elderly people or people that can get to you, like something like it's just hard to connect. And I think that's why people feel like their voice, their vote in the end does not matter.
Right. And I'm going to be accessible to the people. I'll be accountable. Even if I have to go to their house and meet with them there, I will meet people where they are at. I think that's important, especially in local politics.
It is.
Because local politics is where that's possible. Like the president is not going to come visit your house unless you have a mansion.
Right. Right.
But the issue is that so many people are invested in national politics because that's where all the media attention goes to, and they forget, like, you know, the folks on the bottom of the ballot are the ones who have the immediate impact on their life.
And I have said this on here before, and I've had a few guests come on that are extremely invested in politics, especially at the local level, who are always saying, like, even more important, and not to say that you shouldn't care about like a presidential election or, you know, like your senators and things like that. Of course you should care, but they've gone as far as to say even more impactful to you directly is who is at your local level. Like, who are you voting for? School boards. A lot of people don't understand how important those positions are.
Right, 100%, especially school board, because 40% of your property taxes are going to your independent school district.
Yeah.
They're the
and a lot of people are not happy with the school system and the schools in our, you know, locally, but yet they're not showing up to vote.
Right. I mean, elections for school boards are even worse than like other races, because with school boards they tend to be on odd number years, like, and so folks are not really going out and voting, especially like the year after a presidential election. They're just going to stay home. The thing is, the reason why we get so many of the same types of candidates is because the same types of people run, and the people who are okay with the status quo are going to go out and they're going to support those people because they benefit from a system where most people are not represented, where most people have just abdicated their power and just given up. And so that's why I'm out here. I'm here to change that narrative, that if you do go out there and you do support the people who are in your communities who give a damn about you, you're going to have something to show for it.
I think, too, that's what we should focus on. We should focus on the folks here, especially, like you said, like, let's look at the track record. Am I electing somebody who's like a cookie cutter of previous people that have been in the same position? Or I don't know if people know this listening to this, but one of the things that I really appreciated, specifically from Justicia Fronteriza, and I see it more because there are other organizations that are almost like connected to Justicia Fronteriza because they have the same goals, but they have maybe different missions. But, you know, and at the end, like the basis of it is like the same goals for the entire city. But what I like is that every time there's going to be an election, they do a really good job at kind of putting out information on every candidate that's running, and they put like very like they're not biased at all, but like they kind of put like the pros and the cons, very honest, you know, and then in the end they kind of say based on our values, based on what we believe, and based on what we want for the city and what we've been fighting for, this is the candidate that we feel comfortable endorsing, correct? So people, if you are confused about what election is happening, what's actually on the ballot, who's on the ballot, what are their beliefs, what is it that they're trying to do, I really like that Justicia Fronteriza and other groups now, like I said, are doing that. They're like informing us.
Right, 100%. And then one thing I also noticed, this happened in recent years, is like now at city council meetings, council members are publicly disclosing who their big money donors are when they come to ask for certain ordinances to be passed. Like, they would have never done that prior to 2021. And this is a result of Justicia Fronteriza pushing for campaign contribution limits. We wanted,
yes,
one of the things we want is a $1,000 campaign contribution limit for individuals, $5,000 limit for like organizations and PACs, and so that way it levels the playing field, so that we get better candidates, we get more diverse candidates, not just whoever is willing to take money from developers, not just the same cookie cutter types of candidates, and so that's. Justicia Fronteriza is still in the process of pushing for that, but especially like within the last couple of years, we've been noticing that candidates have come out and said, "Oh yes, for the record, so and so has donated to my campaign," and that's direct result of the work Justicia Fronteriza has done before that. Back what you were saying about it's kind of been like par for the course or the norm for people to accept big money donations. One of the things that really kind of just driven my political philosophy is Bernie Sanders. In 2015, in 2016, when he was running, he had mentioned that his average campaign contribution was $27, which to me was unheard of. Like, my jaw dropped. Like, he managed to raise millions of dollars, and the average person is donating $27. So, of course, I went ahead and donated $27 because, I didn't know that was possible beforehand. I thought that, again, like most people, I thought you had to, like, be a high roller. You needed to be able to write a check for 4 or 5 figures to support a presidential campaign. But when I found out I can donate $27 and I can help this man do the work that he set out to do, I'm all in.
I know, and that kind of also changes the narrative now in our heads of like, not only wow, now I can make a big impact, I can be a part of this movement with just, like you said, $27, even $30, right? It's doable for a lot of us. But now it also changes the narrative for people coming up to say, well, maybe I have some ideas and I have some policies, that I want to implement and I want to do the work. Maybe I can also run now and help my community or help my city or my state or whatever. So that also gives us that new way of thinking, like it is possible.
100%. Because until recently, like at least in El Paso, city council members weren't paid that much. I think they were paid like maybe $26,000 a year, and mayor was paid $45,000, which is not a lot. And so you would get, in my opinion, you'd get like 3 different types of candidates. You'd get the retired government employee who had a pension to rely on. You have the business owner who has like their own business with it as their primary source of income, or someone whose like spouse was the breadwinner. So people who basically they could afford to run for office because they have a primary source of income that's going to be taking care of them. Whereas the majority of folks who were working for a living, they could not afford to put their career on pause for 4 or 8 years to run for city council and survive off of $26,000. So that has recently changed. So now they're being paid. City council members are paid $59,000 a year, and I think the mayor's paid $75,000 a year. Some people disagree with that. They think that all elected officials should work for free. And to that, I say you get what you pay for.
You want candidates in there who are going to not be afraid to stand up to the bullies, right? To stand up to those that are big money and they're trying to buy you out. That's going to be speaking up. It's going to be essentially the microphone for the voice of everyone behind this person. Well, they deserve a livable wage. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like, we're not saying we don't want these government employees, these city officials to make money. We're just saying, let's give them something that's fair because they're doing really hard work. But we also don't want to be having politicians who are getting thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars just in donations, just to essentially ignore what the people are saying, because now they're indebted to these people who are filling their pockets.
Right, and we see that with the Texas State Ledge. These lobbyist groups just like pour in, thousands and thousands of dollars into these candidates who are really they work part time. Like every other year, they get $7,000 a year plus per diem. So while they're in session, it comes out to like $45,000, and when they're not in session, it's just $7,000. Because they're working part time and they get so little money, they're really not incentivized to learn how to do their jobs and be better representatives. And it's gotten to the point where now lobbyists are actually writing the laws and just handing them to whichever candidate they bought that session. And the corruption is it's astonishing.
I know.
And we see what happens, like, when folks do stand up, then the special interest groups just pour millions of dollars into their opponents. Like, we've seen that with like this school voucher issue that's happening. Republicans who live in rural areas who understand that public education is important, they stand up against school vouchers. Then Governor Greg Abbott and Kim Paxton start pouring millions of dollars into their opponents' campaigns to get rid of them, because they want people who are going to toe the line of their special interest groups rather than people who are going to represent the best interests of the constituents.
And some of the propaganda, because that's what it is, some of the propaganda that they put out to try and eliminate like their opponent, I mean, they don't even hide that a lot of times. They're just flat out lying. And it's a lot of fear mongering. It's a lot of like twisting things. Back when the climate charter was on the ballot, the amount of money that went into making sure that people were extremely afraid of passing that. I happened to be a clerk on the west side at that time, on the west side of town. I was asked to do it. And the people there showed up to vote, Kenneth. Mm-hmm. Like, they made it a priority to be there early. I'm talking anybody that was able to vote showed up. And I have been a clerk on the east side of town as well. It doesn't compare. It does not compare, but there was less people coming through to vote on the east side. But on the west side, when they were coming to vote, I heard it firsthand, like, this is crazy, it's taxing us, it's too much money. And all of it was just not true. They were missing the point. They were not open to it because of the amount of money that went in to put these ads, these commercials on TV. And it's just like they were being flooded with, and what can I do? Because I can't say anything when I'm there. I'm just there to do my service. Right. You know what I mean? But it was very frustrating.
Right. 100%. The opposition spent $2 million to kill the climate charter.
Yeah.
$2 million. And like you said, a lot of it was fear mongering that, it's going to raise your taxes. At one point they were saying they're going to steal your gas stoves out of your house. And that was a load of crap. What the climate charter was essentially saying is you're going to have a climate department that's going to address climate change in El Paso, and to do a feasibility study on potentially purchasing El Paso Electric. Not forcing the city to purchase El Paso Electric, to do a feasibility study to see if it's economically feasible for the city to do so. Because El Paso Electric is a monopoly, and they're owned by JP Morgan, who's the 6th largest bank in the world, and they're based in New York. So they're no longer an El Paso-based company. They're now a subsidy of a New York-based company. And so just the fear-mongering that went into it, just the deception. And it was a coordinated effort. They even managed to bring Tony Gonzalez in from San Antonio at one point to do a press conference about this. And when I talk to people, one of the things I'll ask them, like, since Prop K election is, since Prop K failed, has your electric bill gone up, down, or stayed the same? And most people say it's gone up, it's increased. So all that fear mongering was just propaganda because your rates went up anyway, and now they're with the smart meters, which a lot of people have strong feelings about that. Everything that they said Prop K climate charter was going to do, El Paso Electric is doing anyway.
Yeah, and I actually had Angel, who was very much a part of like helping draft. She was one of the people who was involved in like the drafting and the process
Right.
that went to draft this climate charter. And you know, one thing that sticks out to me every time that I go back to that chat that I had with her was that she said, you know, if you go look at the website for the electric company and you kind of see their goals towards the future, what they say they're working towards, they're exactly the same thing that we want to do, except we want to ensure that we are, you know, El Pasoans are able to get their electric from people who are here, who know their needs, who are not going to be raising their prices just because they're like out of touch, you know, rich people who don't, like you said, they're not even here. They don't know what life for El Pasoans is like.
Right. And now Angel's living her best life in Barcelona.
No way!
She's in Spain right now, and I am jealous.
Was it for work or what?
I'm not sure.
Or she just said, screw this, I need a break.
Maybe, like, I want to say it was either 2022 or 2023, because I know that I was out of town for a little bit. The Army had sent me to Guatemala for 9 months, and then when I got back, Angel's gone, so I think sometime around there.
Oh, man.
I know.
That Guatemala. Okay, tell me about that if you don't mind. What
Sure.
happened there? Because I know you're still in the reserve,
Right.
so
So what we do is something called the Civil Affairs Persistent Engagement, which is my job in the Army is I'm a civil affairs specialist. And so what we do there is we do humanitarian missions. We work with the U.S. Embassy and the Guatemalan government and organizations there to mitigate the causes of human suffering and irregular migration. I was there for 9 months. I left in July 2022 and then came back May, just in time for the Prop K election. And so while I was there, we were giving out medicine to folks. We were giving out water filtration systems, particularly for people in the area who don't have access to, clean potable water. We were based in Guatemala City, but we traveled throughout the country. Like sometimes we would go into like remote areas where they don't have running water, where they don't have reliable access to medicine. And at one place we went to, it's like a small town, but they're by a volcano, so the volcanic ash kind of makes the water less than
not
potable.
drinkable.
Not drinkable. So
Yeah.
those water filtration systems, which are called ecofiltros, they work absolutely amazing. How it works is like it's made of clay. And so how you do is the clay actually filters the water, and so it's good for like 1 to 3 years depending on the water source. So like if you're out there like in an area where volcanic ash is in your water drinking supply, it's probably going to last a little bit less time. One of the things I'm most proud of was while I was there, I still found time to do volunteer work. There's one place that we went to, and it was tough, but there's one shelter for disabled children in the entire country, Guatemala. It's in Guatemala City. It's in Zone 13. It's kind of hard to miss it if you don't know where to look. And so we kind of stumbled upon it by happenstance. We were meeting with Guatemalan Corps of Engineers for a totally different project, and then afterwards, one of the captains there for the Guatemalan military said, "Hey, come with me. I want to show you something." We walk about 2 blocks to the shelter for disabled children, and it was heartbreaking there to see. They're abandoned there because their families are so poor they can't afford to take care of them. Some of them are products of incest, and so a lot of them are in wheelchairs because they're just so disabled. And the shelter's 2 stories, and so the folks who are in wheelchairs don't have access to the second floor where a lot of the bedrooms are at. So one of the projects we did was we financed the construction of a ramp so that the children can get there. That was for work, but for the volunteer aspect, we came in there, we got them fans because they didn't have air conditioning. We got them a television. We were giving them all sorts of supplies that they need. We spent some time with the children there. I'm trying to keep my composure because every time I just go there and And
It's emotional.
It is emotional.
Yeah.
And the sad thing about it is, so Guatemala has this law, like, for, like, children and adults who are, like, in shelters like this can't be, like, in the same, like, section. They keep adults separated from children. But the problem is, because this is a disabled shelter, and most of these children will never be able to live life on their own. So their entire adult lives. So there are adults there who are disabled. And so they just have a curtain that kind of separates the children from the adults, just so they can stay in compliance. Volunteering there at that shelter, it was emotional, but I'm so glad of the work that I did there. In addition to that, when we had to go to Honduras to build a house there, because the chaplain who was stationed there at Soto Cano Air Base in Honduras, he had this program where, like, once a month, like on weekends, he would take the soldiers out there and help construct a house, because there was this program there, kind of like Habitat for Humanity, but the Honduran version. So we would go out there and construct a house for a needy family that they have identified. And so doing that for 9 months, at the end of my tour in Central America, I was awarded the Outstanding Military Volunteer Service Medal.
Wow. Something like that. I mean, because just being there for work, of course, you're exposed to that, and having a heart, it's hard, right, to still do that. But I can imagine, or correct me if I'm wrong, but I imagine that even just going as far as like volunteering and probably being exposed to more than you would have if you had just gone to do the mission, for work, is probably a very humbling experience, and it probably influences greatly the politics that you want to bring forth. And just like the kind of human that you want to be, in general.
It has definitely, influenced kind of like the work that I do, or I should say reinforce the work that I do. It's just helping those who are less fortunate, helping those who feel like they've been forgotten about, who have kind of fallen through the cracks, and just being there for them, because, I believe that no one wins unless everyone wins. When we're in a society and we're all in this together, we can all help each other out. Like, not everyone's going to be a millionaire. Not everyone's going to have a Bugatti in their driveway. But everyone deserves to be able to have, a decent quality of life. Everyone deserves to be paid a living wage for the work that they do.
Everybody deserves to be safe in their community. Right. Everybody deserves to not be afraid of, just existing.
100%. There are organizations in El Paso that are doing that work, like Annunciation House. They've done great work. I briefly volunteered with them for a few days when Haitian migrants were in El Paso. A friend of mine, Javier Paz, had contacted me and asked me if I wanted to help out with that situation that was going on, because we saw like the news reports where state agents on like horseback were either whipping them or tying lassos around them, and just they were being treated inhumanely. Many of them were living under bridges. So when Haitian migrants were here in El Paso, Annunciation House, what they were doing was helping to reconnect them with family members that they have in the U.S., get them to where their families are at, so that they can have their asylum cases there. Like, they didn't have to have their asylum cases in El Paso. They could have them, anywhere in the country. So what my job was helping them connect with their families, get them their airplane tickets, and then getting them to the airport so that they can be reunited with their families. And again, that was another humbling experience. Many of those folks, they didn't come straight from Haiti to U.S. Many of them were living in Central America, were living in South America. Like, I spoke to one family who had been, I think they were in Peru for about or Paraguay for about, it's either Peru or Panama for about a year before they were able to get to the U.S. to request asylum.
That's crazy. Yeah, like just now that you're touching on that, just the amount of stories that I have heard, like from just face-to-face conversations with migrants from several parts of Central America, South America and Central America. Like, it's really heartbreaking. And I know that it's kind of caused division, even further division, even here in the border, because you have those who, oppose any type of help or assistance or even having any type of compassion for people who are leaving everything behind and just going through very dangerous situations just to try to get to a place where they can sort of maybe, because it's not guaranteed that their asylum's going to be approved, right? That their case is going to be heard and approved. But just to sort of have some type of peace and maybe like figure out what their next move is going to be. And then you have others who are completely understanding of that and are like, well, let's help in whatever capacity we're able to, right? So I'm glad that you touched on that, because if somebody listening right now who's maybe on the fence and feels like, okay, what are this person's stance on immigration? Like what would you say to someone listening and looking for that specific, those specific thoughts that you have on what's happening right now here in the border?
Right. And so this is a humanitarian issue. It's not a criminal issue. These folks are not, criminals and gangsters. And contrary to what a lot of cable news media outlets are pushing out, most of them are not out here committing crimes. Immigrants are less likely to commit crimes than natural-born citizens. But this is also, ultimately, it's a foreign policy issue that's not going to be resolved by building a wall. It's going to require a change in foreign policy from the United States and how the U.S. and other countries, how their relationships are with Central and South American and other countries. Because a lot of these countries where people are fleeing have been destabilized by the United States. Guatemala in 1954, President Arbenz was ousted in a coup and was assassinated, and that kicked off a 50-year civil war, which the effects are still being felt in Guatemala to this day. As far as what city council can do, they can't change foreign policy of the president,
right?
But they can continue to support organizations like Annunciation House that are doing the work, and continue to work with the Congresswoman to ensure that federal funds are being used to support migrants seeking asylum, and so that it doesn't cause a strain on the city's finances, and whatever money the city does put up, that the federal government reimburses them. Because this is a federal issue, not a state issue, not a local issue.
Yeah, no, I know, but so many people, I feel like that's kind of like a hot topic for a lot of people. Yes. And it determines a lot. Like, they just want to know, how does this person feel about immigration? Because a lot of people do say, well, this is going to be a burden on us in the city, right? Like at a local level, this is going to be a burden on us because we're going to have to be like paying for this. It's going to have to come out of our pockets, the taxes being used for that. So yes, even though you obviously would not have the capacity to go and be like, this is how we're going to fix foreign policy but you can support organizations to ensure that it's not destabilizing what's coming in for the city, and be humane and still have that access and resources for migrants.
Right, 100%. And then it's also kind of interesting seeing that this migrant issue, like, while you're in one of the countries where migrants are going through. Like Guatemala, yes, a lot of people migrate from Guatemala to the U.S., but more people are actually using Guatemala as like a checkpoint on their way to the United States. Like, people from other countries are coming into Guatemala and then going through Mexico and then the U.S. and just reading like news reports about what's going on in the U.S. Like that one incident where there were migrants in that truck and they all died, and some of them were Guatemalan. So that made national news in Guatemala. That was a big deal. And then one of the villages that I went to was a remote village where there were more women and children than men, and one of the reasons was that they said that like every year at least 20 young men will leave the village to try to immigrate to the U.S. 80% of Guatemalans who immigrate, who leave the country, go to the United States, and in fact, many of them go there, they work, and they send money back to their families in Guatemala, and that actually accounts for 20% of Guatemala's GDP. Is just money that
comes back.
That comes back.
See, and that's kind of also the same thing. I mean, for so many countries, but like even the Mexican president is always saying, like, the migrants, Mexican migrants in the United States, like they are a huge impact, a huge positive impact on our economy. And they're a huge positive impact for the United States as well.
Yes.
I just don't think people understand that because they're spending their money here, they're buying things here. So they're also pouring money into the economy here, and they don't get to collect anything back, right? Because they don't qualify for, they actually pay taxes. A lot of people don't know this, that even people, undocumented immigrants, they still, I know personally a lot of them who work and every single year they pay their taxes and have no access to resources, which a lot of people falsely say they collect Social Security or they collect government help and medical help. That's not true. They don't have access to any of that.
They don't. And undocumented immigrants actually paid $100 billion into Social Security.
Yeah. So like we are benefiting. Right? U.S. citizens are benefiting from what the work they're putting in.
Yes.
I'm glad that listeners got to hear your stance on that and like how you feel about that, because it is a humane crisis, an inhumane crisis that's happening.
Right, and that's going to be exacerbated by climate change.
I know, and it's like so crazy to me how people are not putting those things together. First of all, there are a lot of people who actually don't even believe that climate change is a thing and it's made up, and they use it for political gain to kind of like, you know, again, the propaganda. They don't believe it's real. And then there are those who are like, well, even if it's real, I'm not going to be around when whatever it is that's coming is going to happen. And I'm like, dude, but your kids, your grandkids, you know, people coming down the line, they're going to be here. You should care.
100%. And again, that goes back to that mindset of community-oriented versus individual mindset, where people think, oh, well, it's not my problem. It's not for me to worry about. They kick the can down the road, and that's kind of where we're at now. But like even in like red states like Florida, where they don't believe in climate change there, I read a couple of years ago that there's an article where city of Miami spends millions of dollars a year buying sand for their beaches because the sea level's rising. I think it's like a third of an inch every year. And so since it's rising, a lot of that sand's going under the current, so they need to buy more sand. And they have to buy a specific type of sand that looks beautiful for their beaches, that's pleasing to the eye of tourists. So I think they import it from one of the Caribbean islands. I'm not sure how much. Yeah, it's crazy. It's like they don't believe in climate change, but they're buying sand.
You're buying your sand, dude.
Like you literally have a beach. We have sand here. I will commit to selling sand to Miami if I'm elected in city council. Buy it from us. I'll sell you the red sands. We'll sell you the white sands. We'll sell you the beige sands. We got 3 flavors. We will sell, and in fact, we'll sell them at a discount for Miami, and that's going to be another source of income for El Paso, selling sand to Miami.
I know, right? Keep denying climate change, bro, and keep buying our sand. But okay, so because I kind of want to ask you something. I told a few people that you were going to come on the podcast, and there was a question that I feel it almost voices, I think it's like a combination of all the different questions that people had for you. So I'm going to ask you this one before I ask you something more relaxed and more fun. Okay. But this question came in from someone that knew you were going to come on, and this is, if I can just find it. Where is it? I had it here. Okay. This person would like to know, how will we, the city of El Paso, and people in your district specifically, will know that you will stick to what you say you'll do and not sell out like other city reps that have had, I guess, like they've been supported by the community before, kind of really hoping that they were going to go in there and do the work, and then in the end, they feel like they sold out.
So one of the things, and I guess it's kind of a like you said before, it's a culmination of kind of the things that we talked about before about being accessible. Like, I'm going to be in the district, you'll have access to me. Keeping the right people around me. When I go to city council, I'm going to make sure that I have, the same people that are with me now, the people who've been with me for years. I'm not abandoning them. I'm not just going to go make new friends. It's just keeping the same core group of people around me to to advise me, to hold me accountable, to tell me when I've done something wrong, so I can make amends for it, and just
Yeah.
to keep me grounded and leveled. And that's kind of, I think, where some people go astray, is that they find themselves in these new surroundings and they're kind of unsure of how to navigate, and so they oftentimes, I guess, form friendships or alliances with people who may not have the best interests of their community in hand, and then they become twisted by all that.
Yeah, I can see that happening, and maybe they go in not thinking that was what their intention at all. But,
Right.
If you have other influences, like you said, especially people that don't have the best wishes for the community to begin with, like
Right.
that influence will weigh on a person. So I think that that's actually a really good idea to keep people who know you, who are already comfortable with like calling you out if they feel like, hey man, this looks like you're kind of like, not on par with what the plan was. That's actually the best thing to do, to keep those people around so that they can just kind of, like you said, keep you grounded and reel you in should you ever feel like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. I'm confused here.
Right. And then we also have to make sure that we get more folks who are like-minded and community-oriented elected to city council.
Yes.
It's not going to just be me. I'm not like the progressive savior of El Paso. We need like at least a 5-3 majority, or preferably a 6-2 majority to override any potential vetoes. So it's going to be looking at folks from the other races. So District 2 is up for election. District 4 is up for election. We have a few people running against the incumbent. District 7 is an open seat. Potentially District 1, if the rumors are true and the representative there decides to run for mayor, that would be it could be an open seat.
So then anybody listening, like, get involved and don't be afraid if you have ideas, if whatever you're listening here, like you heard Kenneth say, if you're kind of like on board with that would be, you could be working with Kenneth.
Right. Absolutely. Or Wesley Lawrence, who's running in District 4, if he gets elected, he and I are kind of on the same wavelength as far as, where we stand on the issue. So the two of us get elected, that's 2 representatives you have, and then, like I said, we need to get a majority.
Wesley's going to stop by the podcast too in a few days, and I'm really excited about that because I've never even like interacted with him, so I'm kind of curious to like learn a little bit about him myself too.
He's got a great story.
I'm going to tell him, Kenneth said you have a great story. Let us know. Let us all know.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you something. I know you say you've been living here in El Paso for quite some time now. I'm assuming, like, obviously now that you're super invested and involved in the community, this is going to be home forever for you.
Yes.
Okay, so what is your favorite spot to visit as far as, like, food-wise? And what's your favorite dish to order there? I know it's a hard one.
It is.
I know it's a hard one because there's so many great places. You can list a couple if you want, but like one that you're just always kind of like going back to all the time.
There's a lot because I don't like cooking, so I'll often just like cycle through different places. Like, example, Toro Burger. Like, I'm there on Mondays because they have like special on their loaded mac and cheese. So they know me there, so I'm there every Monday so I can get the mac and cheese. Also, another location that I really love, and I'm so glad they're expanding, is Pupusa Queen. They have a store on District 4 in the Northeast, but they are currently building one on Montwood now. But right now, while they're constructing it, they have a food truck out there. So I've gone there a couple of times and gotten the pupusas there.
They're so good.
Yes.
Pupusas are so good. And I've seen that food truck, and I'm always like, I gotta go try it. So now I know. This is my excuse. This is my sign.
10978 Montwood Drive. That's where they're parked at. They're closed they're there till 9:00. So because I grew up in Maryland where there's a lot of El Salvadorian immigrants, so I am used to having good pupusas, and Yes, I've been searching for it for so long, and I'm so glad they have it here.
I know. With me, really quick, I actually met a lady from El Salvador when we were stationed in Alaska, in Fort Richardson, Alaska. I had never heard of pupusas in my life. I didn't know what they were. So I was introduced to it by a Salvadoran lady. And so I've tried them in other places that were not authentic, and I was like, no.
Yes.
So I'm going to go there.
And
Okay,
then
another place.
Another place I have to plug is Old Sheepdog Brewery. They just started making food in-house. So it's pretty good. They have good brunch. I like their fried tacos. They got their burritos and their chilaquiles. Their beer is absolutely amazing. Absolutely love it. And the owner, Gus, is a really good dude. He is awesome. He's been so supportive of organizations having events there. I'm actually going to have my birthday fundraiser there on the 23rd of this month in July, so you are welcome to join us.
Oh, okay.
And just for the folks who are listening, it's at Lincoln Park on Rosa Avenue. It's awesome. Y'all need to go there. You need to support local businesses, particularly our breweries.
I second that. I absolutely second that. Every time that I can support local, whether it's a restaurant, a business, arts and crafts, visit your farmers market, that's the way to go. As much as possible, support local.
Yes, and pay cash when you can.
Well, Kenneth, thank you so much. This was really nice. I'm glad that I got a chance to talk with you, learn a little bit more about you. I'm sure there's more, but I also know you're very busy. But thank you for stopping by.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Can you tell our listeners how can they learn about you, your campaign? When is this happening? When should they get ready to go vote?
Election day is November the 5th. I will be on the ballot with the president, the Senate, all of that. So I'm going to be at the bottom of the ballot. I kind of jokingly tell people, particularly those of you who are voting Democrat, vote for Joe and the bro. Yes. Vote for Joe Biden and then vote for the black guy, Kenneth Bell. So vote Joe and the bro, November 5th. Or vote third party and the bro. Just as long as you're voting for Kenneth Bell.
But don't forget the bro.
Don't forget the bro. And so if they want to learn more about my issues and where I stand for, they can go to my website, kennethbelltx.com. Also, they can follow me on social media. Instagram is kennethbelltx. Facebook is Kenneth Bell for City Council District 3. Working on the TikTok. Don't know if it's going to be banned or not, so
work it until you can.
That is the plan. So I've got that. That's also Kenneth Bell TX. I don't have any videos posted there yet, because I don't want to go to jail for having that's a whole situation. But
you don't want to go to jail. Can you imagine? Wait, Kenneth won, but he's in jail. Somebody bail him out.
Yeah, I don't know if city council members can pardon themselves.
I know. I don't think so. Oh, man. Well, this was great. And again, for our listeners, I don't know if this is open for them as well, if they want to maybe go and chat with you, talk with you, one-on-one for your birthday event.
Absolutely. I do one-on-ones with anybody. So if they can't make it to the event, I'd love for them to come. It's going to be at Old Sheepdog Brewery, July 23rd at 6 o'clock. But if they can't make it, please contact me. I will do one-on-ones with anyone. I've been doing one-on-ones so far. So, yes, just reach out to me. I am accessible to you. If I win, I will be your city council representative. And I tell everyone, if you want to know what your candidate's going to do, they're doing it right now.
Cool. That's good to know. So you heard it, people. You heard it. But yeah, once again, thank you so much for making it here. This was really nice. I enjoyed it very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much.